Good evening and welcome to Abstractus. Tonight, Surrealism. Okay, Surrealism is a movement that started in Paris in the early 1920s. It's the creator was a guy called André Breton, a writer, and the movement started with the idea of dreams and how the mind thinks and so on. Primarily, there are three ways, from the way I see it, the three ways of seeing. One is using the eyes, which, although it sounds like obvious, it isn't. Using the eyes, the Impressionist, they captured what the eye saw. The second one is the heart, how the heart sees, forgetting the eyes. Expressionist, both abstract, German Expressionist, heart looking. And the third one, which I think where surrealism comes in, is seeing with the mind and understanding and seeing the world via studying of the mind. Hence, the surrealists were greatly influenced by Sigmund Freud and the interpretation of dreams. Also, around about that time, James Joyce's Ulysses, a book on writing what the mind, or the way the mind sees and not being coherent, that type of thinking. Okay, to illustrate this, I'm going to try and do a painting or use a painting as a starting point by a guy called Magritte, who's a surrealist. I'll mention a few others like Salvador Dali, probably the most known, or Salvador Dali. But for me, Magritte is more of I find it's much more interesting than Dali. Right, I'm going to base myself on a couple of paintings by Magritte. I'm going to quickly start finding, like I always say, jump into it. I'm going to start finding my way around. And by the way, because it's quite a complicated thing that I'm going to attempt to do today, I've taken the liberty of preparing a canvas with the same colors as Magritte used to use: cadmium yellow, lemon yellow, which is cool, green, Prussian blue, to create that sort of dreamy effect. Although dreams, I've never dreamt like surrealists. I never understood that, because my dreams are always very simple, about people and events. I don't dream weird things. But anyway, let's get cracking. Let's start drawing, marking out things on the painting. And one thing I mustn't forget to mention is a painter that I consider possibly the first surrealist. And this is not something that a lot of people or a lot of art books will mention. I'm talking about a guy who started painting in this style in, I think it was 1450. His name was Hieronymus Bosch. And he did a wonderful painting, which I think is in the Prado, and it's called The Garden of Earthly Delights. It's an unbelievable painting. You've got to look at it. So modern, 400 years ahead of its time, or 500 years ahead of its time. Loads of weird things happening. And this guy, lived in 1450, or he was born in 1450. Hieronymus Bosch. Find him out in Google and you'll see interesting work. Okay. Marking out spaces. I'm not concerned about, again, accuracy, like I always say. Just create the idea of perspective. I want to create that. I like this building. I'm just going to use this from this painting. Perspective, the usual. And even if it's not correct, I don't think will make much difference. Quickly mark out the arches. Obviously, perspective, as you all learned in school, when it goes towards the vanishing point, it starts getting smaller and smaller. Then I paint this so the lines don't have to be exact at all. And why I do this is because I want to create that sort of scenery of mystery, which is why I think Chirico is probably my favorite surrealist. There's also guys like René Magritte, very well known for his surrealist work. But for me, the one who really created a strange mood is this guy, Chirico. Another thing I have to mention, like I've done in the past few programs, again, I can't stress enough the importance of photography. At the turn of the last century, the invention of photography to make these movements possible. I mean, if we think about it, at the time artists just did not know where to go. Their medium had been completely turned upside down. They had to think of new things. There was no point, and I stress that today, in doing a painting like a photograph. Why do it? Especially with color photography. So these group of artists thought of going inwards towards the brain and thinking, and Surrealism is characterized by the nonsensical, by the just a position of strange objects. I mean, Dali's phone, you know, he uses a lobster. It's silly. It gets so... Having said that, it has influenced a lot of modern day artists. I mean, Jeff Koons is one. The YBA artist Damien Hirst with his shark, and the title is brilliant, the impossibility of death in the mind of someone living. But all that came from Surrealism. It's just a weird idea. Fantasy art, Boris Vallejo, Roger Dean, all that stemmed from Surrealism. The idea of fantasy, of the mind, and anything can be drawn. If the mind has total freedom, you can do anything. So those are the origins of the meaning of Surrealism. Anyway, I'm just going to invent something now. I'm going to take this off. And if you see this painting, basically I tried to emulate the colors. You see that green is the same as that green there. The lemony yellow, and then going into the cadmium, which is a warm yellow. The orange, which I haven't added yet, but all that adds to that mood. It gives the painting a sensation of a dreamlike quality, which is what we're going to try and do. Now, in my dream, and this might sound like a joke, I see a rock. So I'm going to paint the rock again, but it's just to give it an effect. There's something there in the distance, and it's a rock of Gibraltar. I've just thought, I mean, Dali was the master of this, and you know his famous watches. Everybody knows, you know, melting watches. What a brilliant idea! Now, like I've always said, I'm going to be very, very free. A painting like this would take hours and days to do, right? So I'm not going to even try and emulate that. I'm just going to quickly try and get the idea that we're after. As you see, I'm using a very thick brush. I always like painting with thick brushes. It's one of my characteristics, because it keeps me from being bogged down with details. I just want to cover that in white, so the building stands out from the background. But like I said, this would be like the first coat, and then I'd have to spend hours going over details, because these guys, like we know, were very, very technical. You know, they used to spend